We're back with another author interview. Today I am talking to Jenny Grimes, author of Shaedes of Power. She is an absolutely vibrant soul that makes me not at all surprised the world that she was able to create with fairies and colors and powers. We talk about being different, wanting to belong, embracing your inner darkness, why choose, very mature why choose, and some little tidbits around the rest of this series. Hope you guys enjoy. Welcome to Busy Reading Romantasy, a video podcast that discusses books that merge elements of romance and fantasy while occasionally exploring other genres. We get to escape our world and dive deep into themes of good versus evil, power dynamics, and all of the delicious taboo topics. Curiosity and open-mindedness are a must. That being said, this is a podcast for mature audiences only and will contain spoilers. Your mental health matters, so be sure to check the trigger warnings of each book to decide if this is the right episode for you to listen to. Now, let's get into today's episode.
I live in a very small town.
Yeah. Oh,
I bring my PR packages to the post office, and all the ladies flock to the to the counter, and they're like, "Ooh, what is this?
ooh, what's going on?
Nothing's really happening here."
Fair. I thought about that. I was up at midnight last night looking at some land because I live just south of Tampa in Florida.
Okay.
And it's a very busy area. And I think like one of my dreams is just to like have some acres, and I like have chickens here, and just like I just want to garden and make my little potions out in the woods. And then I thought about that too. I was like, oh well, maybe I can like learn how to make tinctures and stuff and sell them. And that's funny because that was my exact image of like me going to the local post office, wherever that may be, if I want to be in the middle of nowhere being like, here's all my things.
I know. I mean, everybody's just so supportive, but they're also all very knowing everything you're doing.
That is fair. That's a good point.
But I mean, it's so great. And like,
Yeah.
It's funny you say that because I would never have chickens. We don't have the land for it anyway.
Oh, gotcha.
But like 4 blocks down, like I can hear cows mooing when I'm going for like a walk.
Yeah.
So we have like a really interesting neighborhood because it's like residential, but then like you'll be right next to a farm.
Yeah. It's a mix.
Land is nice.
Yeah. I remember I lived here on and off, and when I was in middle school, to drive to my middle school, we passed like a cow pasture. Now it's all developed. You don't see the cows here anymore. They've moved them away. It's very sad. But yeah, so I mentioned this earlier before we started recording. I absolutely love the purple hair. Is this a common occurrence, or have you played with other colors, whatever your mood may be?
So I've always wanted colorful hair. And it's funny because people are like, oh, you dyed it for your book. Because it kind of matches the cover a little bit. And obviously a lot of these shades have colored hair. It literally has nothing to do with that. I love bright color. I love glitter. I love all the shiny things.
Amazing.
So if I see an opportunity, I seize it. But this is the first time I've gotten this kind of color. Yeah. I went to someone new, and she saw the picture and was like, I can do that. And I think that's like the first time that's happened.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do you ever play?
Awesome. I used to a lot. Nothing vibrant. I wanted to call it crazy, and I was like, no, it's just fun. Like nothing super fun. I used to go like red a lot, but I think having darker hair, did you have to bleach it to get that like shade of?
I don't know if it's truly bleach.
Okay.
It probably is. She called it like lightener.
Oh, okay.
Lightened. I don't know. But this is not permanent. Like, I don't know why it's holding on for dear life like this. But I mean, she was like, this might last a couple weeks. And it's been more than that. So
it's meant to be. It's holding on.
I know. I tried doing this like fade from purple to pink once.
Yeah.
And they called it an orchid, like an orchid dye something.
Yeah.
And that did not last.
Yeah.
Like it turned like pinky brown very quickly. So I don't know. You have to be willing to experiment, I think.
Yeah. I realized I have like, I don't know what side of my head, that it's completely natural. It's just like a nice little patch. So I realize now, like, I can color that, and that just occurred to me.
Though I will say, if I had that, I
Yeah,
would not do anything. I would love that. That would
that's
be
fair.
because, like, I have you can even see it coming. I have grays throughout, and it is not like a pretty patch like that. Oh, I would rock that all day long.
Yeah,
I still
I forget about it, so when I, like, put my hair up or something, and then everyone's like, "Oh my gosh," the first question is like, "Oh, did you dye your hair? Like, is it natural?" And
right?
then I'm like, "Yes, it absolutely is," and then people are like, "Oh my gosh, wow," and it's funny because I feel not, like, obligated, but the joke is that I was going through, like, 25 was one of the worst years of my life, and I
No.
started losing my hair, and it grew back white, so it's like a beautiful lesson to not go back there. Like, I gotta take care of myself, and
Oh, I
it's a
love
beautiful
that.
reminder of that. But it's funny because I think people are so they admire it, and then I
Yeah.
feel like I crush their heart a little bit when I'm like, yes, that's natural, but this is how I got it. So like, yeah.
Well, and I mean, Stacey London in like what was it, the early 2000s with What Not to Wear? That like I don't know if you ever watched that, but she had like a gorgeous
Oh
silver
yeah,
stripe.
yeah,
And I think everybody was like, "Oh."
yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
pretty sure that was natural. So you're in
Yeah,
good
rock it.
company.
Thank you. Yeah, amazing, amazing. Yeah, so I would love to know, like, a common thread is a lot of writers used to be very avid readers. Are there any books that kind of shaped your maybe childhood or teenage years? It's
Oh,
been
yeah.
fun going back in time.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's so funny because those are often the books that, like, if I ever was gonna do, like, a reread, it's always those books.
Yep.
It's usually not anything I've read recently because they are such, core shakers and memory
Mhm.
makers, right? So,
Yeah.
like, I think that I was like a Twilight, Harry Potter. I mean, I was reading all the fantasy
Mhm.
things, Lord of the Rings. I mean, I was just I've actually read, all of those things in French as well. Because
Whoa.
yeah, I mean, I just they're beautiful books in
Yeah.
many languages. But then as, like, I got a little bit older, my grandmother was the one that started sliding me, like, romance novels on the side because she was such a big reader. Because I
Okay.
came from, like, I mean, I don't know if 3 kids is a big family. It seemed like a big family because we were really loud. And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
and so, like, my mom would always make fun of me because I would be sitting there in the middle of chaos, and I would just be reading, and I could tune everything out. And so I would go to my grandmother's house to visit, and her and I would just sit in the quiet and read for hours
Oh,
and
I love
hours and
that.
hours. But she
Yeah.
was always like, "Here, I just finished this. You should read it." And I don't know if you ever heard of, like, Mary Barlow.
Mm-mm.
It's like Regency era
Okay.
romances and things like that. I was like, "This is fantastic, grandma." Like, and so that kind of started to shape a different type of reading that I started to enjoy. And then I went to college, and one of my really good friends named Anna was like, "Oh, you like Twilight? You like vampires? Here's this series." And she passed me Laurel K. Hamilton, Anita Blake vampire hunter novels.
Okay.
And those were like what I just devoured in all of my late teens, early 20s. So I mean, I absolutely have always loved fantasy books that make you escape. But obviously a thread of love and romance too was always there, I think.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny how it finds all of us.
Yes.
I somehow you just end up there and you're like, "Ooh, ooh, I like
Well, I
this."
mean, a lot of like your favorite movies and stuff too,
Mhm,
or TV shows. Like, I feel like sort of start to echo, obviously, like the same tropes and things like that. But you
mhm.
really do kind of start to see like what you do like about the love story in particular, and things like that. Like I've said this even in my Discord a few times. I'm like, I was the girl that wanted like Edmund or not Edmund, that's my character, Edward and Jacob, like both be with Bella. Like
Yeah.
I don't think I had a developed sense of any sort of like, polyamorous love or anything like that. But I just, even as a teenager was like, this could have even been a better story if she just ended up with both of them. And then I learned later on, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Like I think that, when you say like books that shape the things that you love, I think that there's so much even in some of those YA books that, like I read Cassandra Clare's The Shadow Hunter series. Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, that was just like a world building upon a world, building upon a world. And it makes you really start to, I don't know, fall in love with lots of different things at once.
Yeah, and there's so many layers to it, right? I was talking about a friend around going back to some of the books that we read in our early teenage years and just curious how now living so much more life and having experiences, how our thoughts and reactions might be to those same books. Because when you're a kid, I think reading them, you get the messaging, but
Yeah,
lately I'm paying attention to different messages as well. There's deeper levels on all of these books, and they're really hidden in there, but a lot of them you can relate to your everyday life, especially in fantasy books.
absolutely. And I mean, I feel like I read a lot of Avi when I was really young. I
Mhm.
don't know if you remember
Not
him.
really. Yeah.
Yeah, and this was a long time ago, a
Fair,
long,
fair.
long time ago. But he wrote I just so many cool books. Um, Actually, now I'm wondering. I don't really know if that was a male or a female writer. The name was always
Oh,
Avi, so
yeah.
I'm just now wondering that. I'm like, I wonder if that was a female writer. I don't know. But anyway, I'm actually sitting by a bookshelf. I'm sure there's an Avi book on here. I could probably figure it out. But but they wrote a book called The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle.
Mm.
And that was one of the first books that I ever felt like there was a suspense element, like a really true kind of powerful suspense element. And seeing sort of a shyer, I don't want to say weaker, but just some female character really rise and grow and have that sort of really powerful, be the focus of that kind of powerful character growth and things like that. And so you're right. It's like I kind of got that when I was younger. Like I'm like, oh man, like this character is kind of amazing. Look at what she's doing now. But now, even as I'm older, I almost appreciate it more for
Mhm.
what they were trying to do with that.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. Um,
inspiring.
I saw that you also mentioned creating art. What kind of art? What tell me more about that.
So I love bright colors. And so I've actually,
Yes.
yeah, I know, right? If I could figure out a way to make glitter look good with the type of art I did, I would do it. But I just I paint.
Yeah.
I've always drawn, I've always painted. For like a hot minute, I was actually doing some of those like painting parties.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I was doing it, like I was the
Yeah.
instructor. Yeah, it was super fun, and I met a lot of really fun people. But no,
Yeah.
I do mostly like whimsical type things.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I like painting animals and bright colors and things like that. So
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Do you share that anywhere or
I used to a lot.
okay.
And I just hadn't when my first child was like a baby.
Mhm.
Everyone was always like, "Oh, you need to nap while he nap." I could never do it. But I
Yeah.
would try to find other ways to just kind of relax and unwind. And I've always like just dabbled in art. I mean, nothing serious. But when they were really young babies, that was when I would spend time doing that, and I would spend time writing. That was like
Mhm.
my way of relaxing and
Yeah.
taking a moment.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I my friend and I walk every morning, and I saw this huge canvas that someone was throwing out. Like, I mean, it's probably like 6 feet long. Like
Whoa.
it's
Yeah.
gigantic.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she's like, "Are we bringing this home?" And I said, "I think we have to because
Yes.
I want to paint over it, and I have like a really good idea of what I want to do with it." So it sits in my book
Yeah.
dungeon, and it's
Yeah.
not. I haven't touched it yet, but I would really like to. I have some shade inspired kind of art that I want to do.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if I do, I'll share that eventually.
I love that. That's exciting. You got it. You got it.
She's a good friend. We carried that at least 2 blocks.
Amazing. Yeah, that is definitely a good friend. um, yeah. So speaking of also writing on top of painting, how did you get into writing?
I just have always found like enjoyment and relaxation in reading and writing. Like they've always just, like you had said earlier, like it just has always
Mhm.
gone hand in hand.
Yeah.
You read a bunch of good stories and then it inspires different things. And so I've never really been someone that thought they would share their writing. Like I think some people, I have author friends that were like, I wanted to be a writer from, this time.
Mhm.
And I think I just always considered myself like someone who loved to write, never like a writer.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that it just came from a place of just falling in love with characters. Like, you'd read a book, fall in love with characters and not want it to end, like that, those
Right.
feelings. And
Yeah.
so I would eventually just get to the point where I create my own.
Yeah. I love
And then
that.
it
It's
just had to end.
a great solution to a problem.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
what is the writing process look like for you? Do you have anything that you need or a space that you've created? Kind of any of that.
Oh, I love that question so much because I think that's one of the things that I have enjoyed the most about um just this journey with Shades of Power, and I think it's because all those times when I would just write for fun, like it was kind of like I had a plan, but it was mostly like stream of conscious writing. Like I would go
Right.
back and you know, pick apart parts that I didn't like, but I was, writing for an audience of one, right? So it didn't really matter. I was just having, fun with it. And I
Right.
had a lot of fun with this book too, but this was the first time I think ever in the years that I've been writing that I was I have so much I want to put in this.
Mm.
I had so much all at once. And I'm like, it can't just be it. I don't want to just sit here. I don't want to forget things. This story just sort of like wove together very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So I really established like my own writing process. And now I've applied it. I'm on book 3 and I love it. Like I'm so
Yeah.
excited about it. And I know that sounds kind of dorky, but I just, as someone who really just never just kind of flew by the seat of her pants, it was really kind of fun to see what worked and what didn't. And so I start with like writing by hand in like a
Okay.
journal, like writing very fast. Like I will sit with chunks of just notes, 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 notes. Um, it looks like my brain on a paper because it's just all over the place
Fair.
and
Yes.
arrows. And I'll be like, go back to this part, blah, blah, blah. It's very chaotic. But then I'll take that and I'll write like an outline. I'll type an outline from
Hmm.
that craziness.
Hmm.
But like, it's so like my outlines sometimes are like 40 pages long, or I think like 28 or 30,000 words. Like they're like chunks. And so it's so great because when I sit down to write, I have
Hmm.
so much to go off of.
Right.
And even if I don't stick to it, at least I have such a great foundation. So that's been really,
Yeah.
really helpful. And then
Okay.
as I write, I've learned it's okay to just move on. That's
Fair.
like my biggest thing, you know, some people say, oh, writer's block and things like that. I never have that because I've just taught myself, make a note, move on.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of writing done because of that. I mean, I really
Hmm.
do. And I know some people that just cannot move on. And I
Hmm.
get that because it's hard when you're like, I don't want to forget what I'm trying to do. I don't want
Right.
to miss something here. But I feel like if you take a good enough note,
Hmm.
it a lot of times, like there's times when I'm like, say something really inspirational here or something like that. Like I'm gonna highlight it. And
Yeah.
the inspiration did not come, right? But then
Right.
on my next loop around, I'm like, oh, now I can make this better. Like I'm
Yeah.
ready. And
Yeah.
And if I'm not ready, sometimes I'm like, let's just change that altogether. But it's
That's
the
fair.
flexibility of having sort of a process that allows for that. So
Mhm.
that's been a really cool part of all this. I feel like
Yeah.
it's really given me a opportunity or like a place to start from. So like I'm not scared to try a new project or to
Right.
write something else because I'm like, I know that if I can do XYZ, like I can get there,
Yeah.
it's inspiring some confidence, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that, and even just relating that to, I actually, I'm a part-time, dance instructor. I teach, like, adult classes. So, each class is like you can opt into any class that you want, and it's, one specific song. It's like 45 seconds of choreography. So we get kind of our list of songs at the beginning of the month, and I know what I'm gonna be teaching this month.
So cool.
Thank you, thank you. It's so much fun, and it feels so good, and to, like, help inspire that confidence in other people is just,
Absolutely.
like, magical. Anyways, I digress.
Yeah. No,
I
I think that's so cool. And that's art, I
Yeah,
think it all needs to be celebrated.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think the confidence to move your own body is very underrated. So to help other people explore that is has been amazing. But I run into the exact same thing where sometimes like I have an idea, but maybe I don't know how to connect the two pieces of like where I want to end up in the dance.
Mhm.
And there's been times where I'm like just like laying on the middle of the floor being like, okay, so this is not happening today. And you just leave it. And I came back to it like 2 days later and it was like boom, 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 it's just like all connected effortlessly. And I was like, oh, noted. Sometimes you just need to like take a little break
Yeah.
and you don't have to force, just
Well,
let it
and
work.
when you're so passionately connected with something, that's a hard thing
Mhm.
to do.
Yeah.
You want
Yeah.
it so bad, you
Yeah.
just and especially if you've done it before, you're like, "Why can't I make this work?"
Right, right. Yeah.
But
Oh.
no, that's good. It's like being gracious with your muse or whatever you wanna call it, like,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay, so we have kind of hinted at it, but we are here today to talk about Shades of Power. This is book 1. To start, can we get a spoiler-free synopsis for anyone who might be interested but hasn't checked it out? I love how every author out laughs the minute I ask that. They're like, "Oh, yeah, what is my book about?"
It's always like I think anytime I talk about my book, I think there's always like a borderline fear. Am I gonna forget what my book is
Yeah.
about? But it's right here. It's
It is so pretty.
pretty.
Oh.
And okay. So it's a dark romantasy. It's a portal fantasy. So you're dealing with a little bit of time in the human realm as we know it, and then also the Shade Court and the Seam, which is like a magical utopia for like all magical creatures. I really didn't want to limit our imaginations or especially mine because I love magic so much and just like fantasy elements in general. So there's a lot of really cool elements in that world. And so it follows Opal, who is our female main character. And in this world, there's a hierarchy of color magic. And so by a certain time, your color magic should develop. And if it doesn't, you're considered not a shade, but a natural. And you are basically like secondary in the hierarchy. You're like a servant or just a helper. And so she's sort of walking this line in the beginning of the story because her color does not really come in, but she seriously has more magic than a natural. So she doesn't quite know where she fits. And so it just sort of starts off with their time in the human realm, sort of observing the humans and trying to figure out, trying to learn more about them and how them as shades can protect them. And then there's conflict sort of right away. And the whole story just follows her and
Mhm.
what she discovers about herself, what she discovers about her heart, and then also her friends that are just like the best group of people, sort of how they deal with conflict too, and
Right.
the story that's going to follow them too.
Yeah. Yeah. Great work. Great work. That's perfect.
It's so hard to summarize so much. It's like
I've noticed.
probably
Yeah.
the hardest thing. That blurb, you write it for the back of the book. I mean,
Yeah.
that is like the literal. I'm doing everything I can to avoid doing it for the third book. Just
Gotcha. Yep.
because I'm just
Fair.
like, this is going to take me longer than writing the actual book.
Right. I feel you. I feel you. No, that was absolutely great.
You're so
I
sweet.
like I've said, I've been so excited to hop into this. So I guess where I want to start is I would love to know more about your thought process on giving the different colors and like associating the different colors and powers. I'd love to just know more about that.
I I love the idea of elemental magic.
Mhm.
And I love magic that has rules.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I don't know if you've ever read like The Magicians by Lev Grossman.
No,
Um,
but is that the one they made into a show?
yeah. Oh,
Okay, I've seen the show.
that was one of the few shows where I felt like it really deviated from the book, but I
Oh,
loved I it almost like I don't want to say it enhanced because the story's so good by itself, but I
yeah.
loved it as like a separate thing.
Okay.
I really
I
loved
have to
it.
actually read it.
Yeah,
But yes.
it's really good. In fact, I don't want to misquote, but I believe I read an article that said that they like changed some of the characters, like the main characters' names in the show, because there was like too many names that started with J or something.
Okay.
So I'm watching this show and I'm like, I'm missing one of my favorite characters. Where is she? And then I realized, oh, it's that character. It's just a
Oh,
totally
yeah.
different name.
Gotcha.
So
Interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
But I love how like he did his rule system with magic. I mean,
Mhm,
it was one of the first times I really thought of magic as almost like a science.
mhm.
Even though like I think Harry Potter kind of did that too. It was just in like a different it was just in a different way. And so I
Yeah.
kind of wanted to take some of those elements and make it even like a little bit more different. Um, and I had the concept of opal was the
Mhm.
first sort of idea of color magic relating to different skills because
Okay.
I knew the type of like conflict I wanted for her and who I wanted her to be. I wanted her to struggle with trying to figure out her powers and why. And so it just made sense that
Mhm.
if she sort of is this like kind of, it's kind of funny because this is not really a spoiler, but by like book 2, they're calling her both the colorless one and she who holds the color of many
Yeah, I see.
because it's kind of like that in a sense.
Yeah.
And so it really just kind of opened up the door to being like, okay, like, so if you had this color, if you had this color, if you had this color. And
Right.
I did have to reel myself in a little bit because I'm like, there's a lot of colors. I could really do like, I think I had like 2 or 3 other ones that I was like, I think I'm going to do this. And then I thought, no, let's keep it a little bit under
Yeah.
control.
I feel I could see myself doing that, being like, "Okay, so blue is this, but then tangerine,
Yes.
aqua, turquoise, that's different."
Yes. I mean, you
Yeah.
could really do something wild.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, that's fun. What was okay, so usually I do my little disclaimer here to say like at this point these are going to include spoilers. We're going to kind
Okay.
of take a bit of a deeper dive into the book. So if you have not read the book yet, please pause, read this amazing book, then you can come back, finish out the episode strong. But so you're welcome to share anything. This is a spoiler
Yay.
now. um I would love to know um, what was your favorite scene to write and most challenging scene?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I think that I'm actually really excited to talk about this because someone asked me recently about this, and I'm like, I can't talk about this because it would be a spoiler, but now I can't.
Mhm.
Definitely, my favorite scene to write was the conversation that Opal and Amira had.
Mm.
When they come back and all of the chaos happens with Kieran, and Kieran basically abandons Amira. Is basically it, which just when I wrote that, I'm like, wow, that was really shady.
Yeah.
Like it really, really was. Like he is seriously like, save myself, leave you behind. And so just that sort of like change in their relationship where you sort of kind of start to see Opal struggling with, you know, I want this relationship with her, but she's not the person that I wish she was, right?
Mhm.
But when they're both kind of sitting there and Amir's just sort of emotionally destroyed from everything that had happened, I feel like they really found common ground, even for just a short moment. And I loved that for both of them. And I had a lot of, I don't want to say fun, but it was one of my favorite things to write, because even as the one that was writing it and I knew it was coming, I could feel those feelings of like, this is going
Mhm.
to be a big moment for them, you
Yeah.
know? And then the audiobook, the way that Laura Horowitz did that scene and getting to hear the two of them. First of all, I don't know how she did it. Like, she's just an amazing audiobook narrator, but she made them sound like they were different people but related.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I don't know how you do that as one person. Like, that's just
Interesting.
ingenious. But no, just hearing, the feelings in their voices and stuff, it just added to it. But I really, that scene meant a lot to me because, number one, I have a sister that I love. I even prefaced when she read it, I'm like, when you read this, this is not like indicative of our relationship in any way, just so you
To
know.
clarify, yeah.
But those feelings of like, it's just deeply rooted. A
Yeah.
familial bond is deeply rooted. So anyway, that was my favorite. The hardest one to write, I don't know. I mean, maybe like maybe some of like maybe the fighting scene at the
Mm.
end, maybe just because it's hard to, especially when you're excited to get to the end.
Yeah,
It's hard
for
to like
sure.
slow it down and like make it as epic as it's in your
Mhm.
mind. So maybe
Mhm.
that one, especially because there was so much happening all at once.
Yes. Yeah.
That would probably be it. Yeah.
Fair.
They were just, things were coming at them at all different angles.
Yes, yeah, that was quite the ending, oh my goodness. Yeah, okay, that makes sense, and even, like, relating it to, I actually spoke with another author yesterday, and when we talked about what we read as children, she mentioned The Hunger Games, and I had mentioned how seeing that in the movie theater, as an older sister, and when Katniss is like, "I volunteer," like, to put myself in those I was a mess. I
Oh
was like,
yeah.
so definitely get those
You
feelings.
got to know them for like such a short amount of time. But
Yeah.
it was still such a powerful moment. Like
Yes.
that's the type of thing in a story that I just love. It's like the author's using so much of like most people's experiences
Mhm.
to fill in some of that,
Yeah,
that that the feelings of those moments.
absolutely, absolutely. So, one of my favorite things to do is kind of taking one of the things that I'm passionate about, right, is, fantasy or romantasy and kind of sometimes how it gets maybe like written off in a certain sense of like
Yeah.
labeled fairy porn or whatever. But underneath there's usually a lot of really great themes um, that can very much be applied to our real life. And for me, one of the big ones was when you have fairies that have different colors and different rankings, and then we're learning about the neutrals, and then also the dark fairies. um, for me, that was a very clear link around segregation and kind of judgment, and based on what we look like regardless of who we are. um, And one of the quotes that I pulled that I really loved was, "When you aren't good enough for the light, the only place left to turn is darkness." I have a very sweet relationship with darkness and coming to terms with it. And so getting the whole that whole backstory and kind of when Opal and Glory are in, the other place, seeing how people live there in the darkness, when they've been cut off from everything
Yeah,
else. Um, there's probably like 10 questions in there, and yet no questions at all. I just wanted to point that out. Um, was that something that was kind of intentional that you wanted to hit, or that it just kind of fell into place and like worked itself out?
absolutely. Like, I love that you love that because I think that, I mean, obviously, even just with the two love interests, there's those opposing sort of qualities.
Mhm.
And we don't hate Edmund. We do not hate him.
That is literally, I'm getting to that. My 2 notes down. I love Edmund, period, no question, period. That's
Yeah,
that's
and
it.
I mean, why is dark
Yeah.
romantasy or dark romance even a thing, right? I mean, there
Right.
is some of that, I think, in most of us, but the whole concept of like what makes a villain, like
Mhm.
what breaks someone and makes them make the choices they do. I think that sort of like these people that flock to the Shadowlands to sort of live a different way. Um, it really comes from, and I think Opal sort of realizes this too along the way. It comes from a feeling of wanting to belong to something, right? Like,
Mhm.
you not everybody fits in one thing. And so the Shadowlands is definitely a vehicle to show like yeah, there was some rough moments in the Shadowlands, but like really they were partying. They were
They're having
like,
a great time, yeah.
yeah, they had a thriving court, right?
Yeah.
And so it surprised her,
Yeah.
as I think it surprises any of us when we get to know people that are different than us. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, this is kind of interesting. This is very different, but cool. Like, and so I love that. Like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna misquote myself, but my favorite quote in the book is when she's talking about her tattoo,
Mm,
and
mhm.
she says, um, they're talking about Kieran and sort of like his just the disaster that he's creating. But it's like a moment of empathy because she says something like, I looked at my tattoo, which was rooted in the ire of being ostracized at court for the way that for the way that I didn't fit in.
Mhm.
And I think of a world where I'm called cursed and maybe we all end up like Kieran in the end.
Mhm.
And I felt that when I wrote that because I mean, it's like almost anybody could be on the edge of
Mhm.
feeling that way. Like, you get labeled a certain way, you don't fit in with the group that you're around, and you can find yourself in probably a situation like that one character with the quote that one
Mhm.
servant who was like, I'm here because this was all this was where I fit in. And so
Yeah.
I think that you're totally spot on that, it's a fun fairy book. Like it is at its roots.
Yeah.
It is. You want
Yeah.
to escape. It's there. There's some
Yeah.
spice in there. It can be so entertaining, but
Mhm.
I hope that some people do find the deeper elements because that was definitely intentional.
Yeah.
I wanted to write a story that I wanted to read. And so
Mhm.
the books that I love have all that fun stuff, but then it also makes you think.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So speaking of this love triangle, this delicious love triangle, when you were talking earlier about, kind of the Edward versus Jacob and the why
Yes.
choose moment, I was like, "I cannot wait to talk about this." So, first we get Ferris. One thing I definitely wanted to ask, he has a very intense backstory as well. Why was that important for you to include when it comes to him?
So some of it was there needed to be a reason why he he could leave it all in a
Mm.
sense,
Mhm.
like it was
Yeah.
and I don't even say it started that way, but I knew that there had to be I didn't want him to have a bunch of family or like
Mhm.
a huge life that he was leaving behind in the sense, because I don't think that would have been as believable that he would be
Yeah.
willing to sort of make that transition. But I also wanted to give him more depth, um, and have him be a little bit more for Opal, like
Mhm.
to be a little bit more understanding, to be a little bit more willing, to be a little bit more okay with the darkness,
Mhm.
because that's a part of her, but it's also going to become more of a part of her. So like
Yeah.
he needed to understand some of those things. So that's
Mhm.
kind of why I did that. And of course, I also wanted people to, um, appreciate him and his positivity from the
Yeah.
standpoint of like, look where he came from.
Mhm.
Because he's such a I did not write him like this, but he is such a controversial character. Like I've had so many people be like, I don't know, something's up with him. Like they
No,
don't
wait, I did feel that in the beginning. I was
yes,
like, I didn't trust him right away.
we don't trust somebody that
Yeah.
is that positive and
Yeah.
that like non-resistant to change, non-resistant. But it's so interesting because if you look at it from his perspective, not from ours, right?
Mhm.
Because if it was us, it'd be like, oh my God, like you literally just almost died and now you're in this thing. But from
Right.
his perspective, he had such a horrible childhood and he's been living such a lonely life.
Mhm.
Yes, he's happy, but he's choosing to be happy, right?
Right.
And so, like, he's choosing to be happy in this new life.
Mhm.
And that's where like his power comes from.
Yeah.
He's powerful because he can literally go, this is okay. I'm okay with this. Like I wasn't okay with the way my life started, but I'm
Yeah.
choosing to be okay with it now. And so I love that about him and I love that for Opal because I think she also sort of mirrored that situation.
Mhm.
Not in the sense that she had like this traumatic childhood. She had a great childhood,
Right.
but she's having to make a lot of choices herself. And I
Mhm.
think he does a good job of sort of guiding her, in a more positive direction,
Yeah, and just being
especially with
there
where
for
she's
her.
going.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So then we get Edmund.
Yes.
Loved him off the bat. And it's always, I think that's, something more for those of us who read this genre more often, that is almost more familiar. It
Oh,
is
yeah.
so funny how you say that because I didn't even realize that in myself of, like, having this sweet, kind person, and I was like, that's
Right.
not right." But
Right.
give
It's
me
so great.
the yeah, but give me the, like, the bad boy
Yeah.
that is
The
putting
red
on this
flag.
and I'm like, "Ooh, yes, I will take one, please."
But that's the fantasy, right?
Yes,
Like, that's the
absolutely.
fantasy element. Because in real
Yeah.
life, you're dating 2 guys and one treats, you like Edmund and one treats you like Ferris. I mean, your mom's gonna tell you to go with Ferris.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. That's very much so. Um, so what was the process of getting to, write, or create, like, Edmund's character, who's just, like, dripping in this sexual tension, and he was like, "I'm all for it, but you're not ready for that." Like,
Yes.
what was that?
Um, I well, like I said, I wrote a book that I wanted to read. So I created a character that I really wanted to get to know. I just love vampiric elements to start.
Yeah.
So like I knew that was so I knew that I wanted a vampiric character in this book. I
Mhm.
did not set out to create an origin story for the vampires, but I did, and that was one of
Yeah,
my other favorite things to write.
yeah.
Because that was a passion project right there.
I
That sort
bet.
of took on a mind of its own. But with Edmund, I just wanted him to be a I wanted him to be good for Opal. Like, I
Mhm.
wanted there to be elements to him that she would recognize. But I also wanted him to be totally not what she's ever been exposed to before. So with contrasting him and Ferris, it's easy to do. They're very polar opposites, right? But
Mhm.
like, especially as the series goes on, his role in her sort of character development is really, it's cool. It's really cool, and it's really it highlights more of his personality. So like,
Mhm.
I love all these comments I keep seeing about him. He's just such a hot gardener. He's such a hot farmer. Like, I just love it because he does have that sort
Yeah.
of thread of plant magic in him.
Yeah.
Um, but that's like his more gentler side in a
Yeah.
sense. And so
Mhm.
that's a part of him too. But the darker kind of dangerous, broody, like, you know, he is okay with the darkness. He's okay with
Yeah.
his dark side.
Mhm.
He's okay with things not always being positive. Um, he's kind of emotional too, like a little bit.
Yeah.
And not like crying emotional, but like he
Mhm.
has stronger emotions. And
Mhm.
so as the story goes on, I think Opal having that sort of, I don't want to say role model, but like that sort of experience being with someone that's like that, it's like she's got two different guides
Mhm.
to sort of walk her through some really crazy stuff. And I love the concept that, not everything that's dark is meant to be scary. It
Mhm.
can, I think that's one of the quotes, right? Different can be beautiful.
Yes, that is very
Darkness
near and
can
dear
be
to my heart.
darkness can be beautiful, and it really can. And he shows her. I mean, he shows her in this book, but he really shows her in the second and the third
Mm,
book.
okay, okay. Yeah, the other thing, bonus points for the nickname, Little Prism.
Oh,
I read so much that now I've really become a fan of unique nicknames, so that just made me weirdly excited. I was like, "Yes."
I love a nickname that means something.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I love I love it where there's like a reason or a story behind it. And I
Yeah.
kind of like how he doesn't really explain himself up front. He
Right.
just sort of is
Right.
like in his mind, he's just like, this is what I'm calling you. And then
Yeah.
later when she learns why, I think she's still kind of like, but it grows on her
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Very fair, very fair. So, we get to the ending, and it there's still some outlying things, like, obviously, it's, mm, very sad that, she can't just have both of them right there with her,
Yeah.
create some more of that tension. The other quote that got me, "Take care of our girl." I was like,
Yeah.
"Ah, yes." I love it. I love this kind of, the idea, right? You would expect them, and they kinda do a little bit to be very, like, kind of, like, macho and almost, like, fighting over, but, like, recognizing that
Hmm.
you can just have that, and that it can work out, and it's such a good balance for her in both senses,
Yes.
between the little delicious love triangle.
It's like it's like a triangle that is trying to become like a circle, right?
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
and but it's not quite there yet. And that's what I really loved about the ending. I think it's so funny how some people read that and they were like, I don't like who she chose. They're like, I don't like it. And then there's some people that are like, oh, I love the wide choose element of this.
yeah.
And some people just did not read it that way. And so I
Mhm.
loved that there was tension there and sort of a question. Like,
Yeah,
obviously we're gonna see Edmund again. We're gonna see him again.
right.
At the end, he was made that very clear. But
Mhm.
it wasn't exactly clear, like between her and Edmund and Ferris, where they stood, right? Because
Yeah, yeah.
they know each other exists. They know
Mhm.
she loves them both. But,
Mhm.
like, what does that mean? What are they doing? Is he just,
Yeah.
like, it's so I
Yeah.
think it was meant to be a little bit like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, "We'll see you next Tuesday."
But yeah, and when she when she got back to her court and saw Ferris was still there and everything, and I felt the tension of like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? Is she gonna have to like walk away from him because you can't deny the
Yeah,
love
he's
that she had
still there.
formed
Like,
for
yeah.
Edmund. Yeah, and he's just like, and he's so happy, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna get crushed. And so for it to play out the way it did, where it didn't have to be um, a question. We do very much live in a society where it is normal to have one sole partner, and so
Yeah.
anything outside of that is looked at as being very different and um, challenging, right? And it is there's
Oh,
more dynamics to
yeah.
it. So the fact that it went down the way it went down, and Ferris was just kind of like, I'm just here for you right now. Like we'll figure everything else. Right now,
Yes.
I'm here for you. And it continued to develop that way. So I loved that, and it was very refreshing to
Thank
read.
you. It's someone said once, like, it's a very mature love triangle.
Yes,
And I
yes.
loved that because I'm like, usually you do have a lot of I don't fighting,
Yeah,
arguing and things like that. And I'm
jealousy
not
and all that.
saying yes, and I'm not saying that's not gonna happen in a sense, but
Right.
there is this sense of like, I'm a grown up, I made my choices,
Yeah,
and I understand there's consequences. I
yeah,
might not like the consequences, but like I'm capable of making decisions, and yes, I want in on this, kind of
yeah.
thing. So it's very fun to write.
I was curious how that would play out because I did have a thought of like, I feel like Edmund would be into it. I don't know how Ferris would
Yes,
like think about it, but I was
yes.
like,
So
okay,
Edmund's always dancing upon like the I am like the Moon King and don't even look at me kind of thing. Like he's sort of
right.
got like a very standoffish, very sort of um like, oh my gosh, what's the word? Like he doesn't want to be touched. He doesn't want people to be familiar with him.
Right.
He has sort of like that distance. And so, and Ferris is just so like, oh shucks. Um but the two of them together is just it's hilarious because
Uh-huh.
yeah, but they're also really linked with the way that they love this woman. And
Mhm.
so it was very fun to write. Very,
Yeah.
very fun.
Oh, amazing. Okay, so before we switch focus to what you have going on in the future, is there anything else you want to make sure that we cover within Shades of Power? Anything you want to talk
Hmm.
about?
I know. No, I'm so like thankful for everyone that's, pre-read it, but also just all the great feedback and things like that. I really love the cover.
Yeah, it's
Um
a good one.
the imagery of the Perry flower was super important to the story. And
Mhm.
I've had some people that like haven't really even made that connection that that's what it is.
I did not, and I was like, "Oh."
Yes, I
Fair,
know.
yes.
'Cause yeah, it's not a huge theme of the book, but it was a huge theme to Opal.
Yeah, yeah.
And it represented pretty much her life in a
Mhm.
sense, just being something that's constantly being sort of discussed or looked at for what it could be and not what it is,
Mhm.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, that's my only other thing. I love talking
Yeah.
about this book, and I'm so thankful to talk to you about it. But I really did enjoy the imagery on the cover.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have to I will English. I will go back and look at it a little closer. I did really
Yeah.
appreciate the cover, and it makes sense the minute you said that. I was like, "Ah, yes, that absolutely makes sense." Um, but so looking forward, the very exciting part is on your website, you already have the names of the next few books. So we have Shades of Fire, that is listed for a 2025 release. Is there anything you would like to or can tell us about the book and specifically around when it might be released?
So I actually just learned the release date.
Oh,
It's
okay.
yes, June 10th of this summer.
Wow, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm super, super excited. When I submitted Shades of Power,
Mhm.
I I had already like I think a quarter of Shades of Fire written.
Okay.
So it has been, and then now waiting for the release of Shades of Power. I mean, I finished that book, that's done, and now I've got like almost 95,000 words of the book 3 done. So
Wow, yeah.
I'm it's just kind of cut, like I said,
Chugging
it's
along, yeah.
coming coming out. It's God bless those big outlines.
Yes.
But but the thing is it's the way I've set up the series has is going to follow Opal and her love interests, and there's going to be, you know, high stakes chaos throughout, and all
Mhm.
of the soul magic thread and everything like that. But then each book will also highlight one of her amazing friends and sort of their coming into their
Oh,
power, or at
yeah.
least a better understanding of their magic. So Shades of Fire is going to follow Opal and Edmund and Ferris and all of that. There's going to be dragons in it. We're going
Ooh.
to go to the dragon court, and that was just way too much fun to write. And
Yeah.
then, and then we're also going to focus a little bit on Lyanna,
Okay.
and sort of like a little bit deeper into her character and her magic and her story. So
Yeah.
it's it's great.
Oh, we didn't even talk about her. She was a very fun character as well, and as someone who is very quiet and people-pleasing, I admire her so much.
I do too. I mean, everyone's always like, "Oh, which character are you most like?" I'm like, probably Ferris.
Yeah.
All these strong, amazing, like kick butt women. It's like I aspire to be like them,
Yeah,
but
right.
you know, I want to be Leanna's friend is what I want, because I
Yeah.
think she would not let anybody ever say a harsh word against you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So like watching her go through what she goes through in book 2 is a blast, because
Ooh.
she delivers exactly what you want her to deliver,
Mhm.
but there's also some moments of surprise too, which is really good.
I'm so excited.
Yay!
Are there any other stories on the horizon floating around in your brain that you hope to maybe get to someday?
So, yes, so funny. One of my arc readers already guessed one of them. She said,
Oh.
yeah, she said, "Wouldn't it be so cool to have like a Draco or Kieran origin story?" And I was
Mm.
like, "Oh, do you have my notebook in your house?"
Yeah.
No, I mean, I have a whole little mini spin-off series in mind
Yeah.
to start, because I feel like it's so easy to write these books with these characters um and really like delve into some major conflict, but then
Mhm.
I feel like there's all the world is set up so it could just be really big.
Yeah.
And so I this would be like a parallel little series that I'm starting to sort of map out, but it would start with Draco,
Okay.
and
Okay.
sort of where, you know, the way that he's described, and the way that story has been told over the years, and just as like a history lesson, like, oh,
Mhm.
this is how this is how the dark ones got started, this is where the hate comes from. But
Mhm.
it's like, what was he like when he was a kid? You know, what was he
Yeah.
like when he was um you know basically like Opal's age, like, and trying to
Right.
figure out what, life was supposed to be like, what drove him to get to the point where he was, that determined to figure out what was wrong with him, in a sense. So I think
Mhm.
that that could be a really cool
Yeah.
story.
That's exciting. That makes me very excited, and it makes sense because you have created such a beautiful world. So there are a lot of stories, I'm sure, within that, that.
Well, and I also feel like when you have a one character telling the story, it's also,
Yeah.
you know, it's meant to be like that. It's her
Mhm.
story.
Mhm.
But then looking further into it, it's easy to go, well, maybe Amira has a story to tell.
Mhm.
I mean, we didn't even get to see
Yeah.
all of the things that she sort of glazed over in her
Yeah.
big, like, long, I'm so worldly, let me tell you about it. Like, she didn't really go
Right.
into any of that. And
Yeah.
so I have
Yeah.
some really cool ideas of how to
Yeah.
delve more into that, I guess.
And that is one of my favorite themes that is very relevant in fantasy, as well as this idea of like the story is told by the victors.
Mhm.
So that also gives a great opportunity to pause, go back and be like, oh, that might be a different version than what, has actually happened.
Exactly.
Or yeah.
Well, and especially in a fantasy world where you could live for like 1,000 years, right?
There's a lot
I
of
mean,
history there.
and there's a lot of distance that you
Yeah.
can, a story can be twisted and can be changed. So
Yeah, yeah, that's true. All good
so
things.
fun.
Awesome. So, do you have any other exciting, do you go to any like bookish events, anything coming up this year that you're excited for?
I mean, I cannot believe that it's almost March. Like I
Yeah.
cannot
Yes.
believe it because I feel like I've been waiting since like last March. I mean, like it's just been crazy. So
Yeah.
I have not booked any event type things yet. I just have a lot of like excitement for the two books coming out and then
Mhm.
a lot of dreams to do more things with it. But
Absolutely.
I kind of need to get through this launch first.
Yes, I don't blame you.
In the
That
best way.
yeah.
I'm so excited, but it's been crazy.
Yay, that's so exciting. You'll come down to Florida. We have lots of events in Orlando,
Well,
or I can come up that way someday.
I was
It'll
gonna say you wouldn't have to twist my arm to get me to go somewhere warmer at this point. Oh my
That's fair.
goodness.
What's the weather like there?
It's getting better, but
Okay.
Illinois has had the weirdest winter ever. We've had like almost no snow, but then we'd have like 48-degree days followed by like -10 days.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just like won't make up its mind. So right now it's beautiful. It's
yeah.
like almost 50 and sunny, but that has not been the case. So
That's fair.
I would love to go see some real sunshine.
I have lived here just long enough that I still forget around it because I was born in Seattle, so I'm from the
Oh,
north,
okay.
but I've lived here for quite a while now, and so like I'll just casually. I mean, I started my garden 3 weeks ago, and
Oh
people are
my
like,
gosh.
"Yeah, my cucumbers are like that big now." I'm like,
Oh,
oh, they're getting there. I gotta get trellises this weekend,
that's so
but
exciting.
it
You and
is.
Edmund have that in common.
I I'm just living my best farmer life.
Yes.
Well,
Too funny.
Jenny, thank you so much. This has been an absolutely great
Absolutely.
conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for reaching out. And if where can people find you if they would love more information?
I'm most active on Instagram. So it's
Perfect.
author.jenny Grimes. But I mean, I will answer an email. I have a website. I'm easy to find.
Yeah.
I love connecting with people and that's been probably one of my most favorite parts of all of this. I didn't really, you put something out there and you're very, very new, and I did not expect people to find it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
now that some have, it's just been a blast.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for sharing your work with the world. I guess to close out, my favorite question to ask is for anyone looking to write their debut novel, what advice would you have for them?
I've been asked that before, and my favorite answer to give is to just obviously do it. Just go for it.
Mhm.
Don't read all the statistics. Don't talk yourself out of it because it's easy to do once you start looking at like what it takes and how, certain people are this successful, only this many are it's not even worth it. Write something that you love first and then just take it slow. And my God, I don't know if you can hear that. My cat has just discovered that I'm in here with the door closed.
Yes. I
sounds like
found you.
sounds like an ogre's trying to get in. But no, I really, I also always say, like, I think maintaining, like, especially if you're a reader to begin with, and that's how you fell in love with books, just to continue reading too. It is so easy to, like, get so focused on what you want to write. And then I feel like, I don't know, because I almost did that. It's like you forget about what you love about books because you're so focused on the writing and things like that. So I think that if you always are also reading and enjoying what makes a good book, then I think you'll write one too.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Perfect. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you. This was so fun. It was so fun to talk to somebody who, like, has read it, from cover to cover already. Like, so fun.
Yes. Yeah. That's been my favorite with these conversations, is a little bit of a different take of, like, it's nice to
Absolutely.
actually dive into the book rather than trying to keep things like spoiler free and talk about a
Oh,
book,
it's hard
because
to dance around stuff.
there's only so much you can say before you're like, read the book. And then we can talk.
Yeah, you just become like a list of sound bites because you
Yeah.
just can't really go there.
Yes. No, exactly. And it's been so much fun, because I have only, like, interviewed a handful of authors still. And I remember showing up for my like first one, and I was like, I've never interviewed anyone. What am I doing? Like, okay, just have a conversation. So, like, being able to start to look at books a little bit deeper, and it's so fascinating to be able to get the author's perspective on why things are the way they are, or, like, connecting things that maybe I didn't connect. And it makes it so fun.
The best. It's the best. That's
I
I feel the exact same way.
Yeah, I was literally, like, all of February, I was like, "Ah, maybe, like, what if no one's listening? Why am I?" And I was like, "No, I love doing this regardless. I would do this even if nobody listens." So it's okay. But
I love watching your stuff on
oh,
Instagram. That's
thank
where I
you.
see it because it's,
Yeah,
it's right there.
yeah,
And I think it's so fun. And it's so fun. You can see the excitement people have for books in so many different ways,
yeah,
in the things they share and, like, the way that they comment and stuff like that. But having a conversation like
yeah.
and getting to see both sides get excited about certain things. I mean, who doesn't want to be a part of that? Like,
Right.
that's so
Yeah.
fun.
If you've made it to this point in the episode, thank you so much for watching. I'd be incredibly grateful if you showed some support either by following or subscribing, depending on what platform you're watching on, and leaving a comment. You can always follow me on Instagram at Busy Reading Romantasy, or on TikTok at busy.reading.romantasy to see what I'm up to. You can also email me at busyreadingromantasy@gmail.com to tell me your thoughts, dreams, secrets, or if you just have any book and author suggestions you'd love me to cover. Grab yourself a good book, get cozy. I'll see you next Wednesday for a new episode.